regular governing board meeting this Tuesday. Let's see here. June 23rd at 7:11 p.m. And to kick us off, I'd like to call on Ms. Katie Cartier to lead us in Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Let our roll call reflect that governing board members Amy McSheffrey, Donna Young, Jeannie Castine, and Carl Zaragoza are present. Absent is board member Annette Sexton-Williams. From cabinet, we are joined by Dr. Boyle, and absent is Dr. Bogman. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's governing board meeting and remind the audience of our request to address board cards that must be completed and submitted to the board secretary if they wish to speak to an agenda item. Our policy calls for 2 cards. White cards to be submitted in order to speak to an agenda item, and blue cards to be submitted in order to speak during public comments. Policy also states there's a 5-minute maximum time limit for a speaker. Due to the open meeting law, board members are not allowed to address items that are not on the agenda. If you do not want to address the board but wish to give your comments in writing, you can do so on a golden red sheet, and all members will receive copies. May I have an approval of the agenda?
I move the governing board approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay.
Does anyone want to do the agenda?
I think we can decide when we get there.
Okay, that's fine.
Great. It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. Adoption of the 2015-16 budget pursuant to policy DB.
Move the governing board adopt the total aggregate school district budget for ARS 15-905 and insurance proceeds budget for 15-1103C for fiscal year 2015-16.
A second.
Great. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Public comments. Any blue cards? Hold up. No. Great. Thank you. Dr. Boyle, superintendent report, please.
Yes. This evening, I'd like to welcome everyone to our final governing board meeting for 2014-15. And before we go dark, I would like to thank our governing board and all of you who support education in Creighton School District for the fine job that you do on a daily basis. It's an exciting evening for me in that it probably is the last meeting until the fall for about 25 years of governing board meetings. So it's quite exciting. And what is also exciting is the governing board that I've had the opportunity with which to work. And I'd like to announce this evening that one of our governing board members has been appointed to the Title 15 working group announced by Superintendent of Public Instruction, Diane Douglas, who has convened a group of educators, both in public and charter schools in many varied areas in our school environment. And Jeannie Castine is representing she's a member, of course, of our Creighton School District Governing Board, and she's a current teacher at North High School. So she's representing this committee as a teacher and a school board member. So congratulations, and we know you'll do a good job. And would you like to give her a round of applause? So some of the questions that Jeannie and her group are going to be answering are questions like, how does this law help kids? Is it required? Or does it increase student achievement and improve accountability? And so the prevalence there is that our schools are burdened by ineffective administrative tasks, and therefore this working group has been called together to propose changes to redirect a school's time, effort, and money by improving student success. So we know Jeannie will do a good job, and frankly, all of our governing board members serve on various committees and always do an outstanding job. So thank you very much, governing board. And that's the end of my report. Until I do call to the public in the fall when I'm sitting where you're sitting. Carl said he'd send me some ideas during the summer, right?
Thank you, Dr. Boyle. Governing board report.
Today, I had the privilege of visiting Monte Vista School. It was gorgeous. It's fantastic. Some of the things are quite different than, they're different than Papago, even though they went in the same period. But some of the small architectural points are really interesting. Mike was showing me around and pointing them out. It's going to be a real neat school that opens up in the fall. It's nice. I really like it. Overall, I think it's great. I hope the students like it as much as I did.
Great. Thank you, Donna.
Well, in addition to the Title 15 working group, I've also been selected to take part in another working group through McKeesa, who I'm currently in a summer internship with, and we are going to be working to put together a project and policy, like a working policy proposal that will turn into a project to tackle the problem of juvenile justice in the education system and opportunities. So we don't know yet who's going to be on there, but I've been invited to attend a conference and then continue on for 2 years to check in with Georgetown University to see how our project's going. So very exciting. Oh, that's right. And this is just kind of an open, I wanted to mention that First Things First is having a conference coming up here in a minute. And with the director of First Things First reached out to me, and there's a conference about pre-K education, and I just kind of thought with the new preschool going in at Papago, that it might be something that maybe our board members would want to attend. It's here in the state. Perhaps even our educators. I'm sorry, I didn't pull up the details. I should have pulled up the details, but I know that I passed it along to Hilda, so if anybody's interested in that, they could talk to Hilda about attending I think it's a 2-day conference here in Phoenix through First Things First, the importance of pre-K. So, thanks.
Thank you, Jean. So I'd like to start by thanking Mr. Walmer. I'm excited for his opportunities in Flagstaff. I know he's going to serve them well as he has us. Jeannie already stole some of my thunder, but he's made the budget process super easy. And I know, like, in this work, like, very few people totally understand education finance. It's one of the most complicated systems that we have in place. And I feel as a board member, I've always felt comfortable taking his input. So thank you. Thank you, Scott. And I know we've already showered Dr. Boyle with some love. It's our last board meeting with Dr. Boyle, so I just wanted to once again say thank you. It's been quite a ride. And then today I had the privilege to do a site visit over at Papago to check out the Coffee Girls Co-Robotics program. So I got to see our students, 6th grade through 8th grade, working on coding and working with the robots, and they invited me to come be a judge. So I'm really excited to see how this program is developing and see where this goes. It's really quite intriguing. I encourage you all to do it as well. That concludes my report. Thank you. Our next agenda item is the approval of consent agenda.
I move the governing board approve consent agenda A through R in accordance with policy BEDB-R.
Great. It's a long agenda. Are there any questions or discussion? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes, thank you. Item 6A, educational services. This is an update on our curriculum adoption. I'd like to invite Mr. Dubin to give information, and then we also have a comment card for us to consider later. Oh, and before we move on, actually, we did just, I wanted to bring up Dr. Lewis to introduce the two new interims that we approved.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm sure Scott and Jim's shoes are really, really big and hard to fill, but I am very pleased to tell you that we have two of Arizona's finest who are going to be joining the team for about 60 to 90 days while we get our feet on the ground and build a team. And both of these people who have extraordinary experience have agreed to come in to help us. So let me just briefly introduce you to first, who will be our director for budget services, has been Kathy Elliott. Will you stand up, please? Kathy Elliott has been assistant superintendent for business services in the Fountain Hills School District. She was director for budget and finance in the Cave Creek Unified School District. She's been an auditor and an accountant with the Heinfeld and Beach Association. She is a certified public accountant. She is a CPA, and she currently does private consulting all over the state of Arizona, helping districts kind of pull it together when we all kind of hit that 11th hour of concern. So we're really lucky to have Kathy Elliott, and I know that Scott has a lot of high regard for her as well. So will you please welcome Kathy to the team? And sitting next to her is, please stand, Tommy Neal. Tommy was formerly Deputy Associate Superintendent for the Arizona Department of Education, where she led from the ground up the entire school intervention turnaround program for schools. And there were 80 plus schools kind of struggling, and she brought it down to 4 in just a matter of a year and a half. She's also been a director for curriculum and instruction in the Glendale School District. She's been a principal coach with the Washington Elementary School District, as well as with Beat the Odds, ASU's TAP program, and Project Lead. She also started her career, I believe, or at least spent a significant amount of time in our neighboring district, Madison. Is that right? Mm-hmm. So we are just truly blessed to have two people who are willing to come in and help us out through this transition. And I know you'll give a warm welcome to not only Tommy, but her husband sitting right next to her, Steve. 2 for 1. 2 for 1. He's with the package. That's right. So please help me welcome Tommy.
Thanks, Dr. Lewis. Sorry, we're ready for you now.
All right. Good evening, Mr. President, Mr. Board, Dr. Doyle. Welcome to the new members of our team. Happy to have you on. As stated, this evening, our objective is to provide you with an update on our process and our progress as an instructional materials adoption committee. We're not seeking at this time a request for adoption, but rather we wanted to give you all the information that we have and also engage in a process of clarifying any additional questions or requests for additional information that we may have so that we can return in the near future with a request if it is appropriate to do so. Tonight we will be summarizing some of the background information that we've provided to you in the past, highlighting those new activities that we've engaged in since the last time I was here in May. Also share the results of our findings and review our plans for tech integration and clarify next steps, as well as engage in that discussion. I'm also really pleased that I'm joined this evening by members of the KBLA Adoption Committee. If you are on the committee, would you mind standing? There's a few of us. Would you please join me in a round of applause for these hardworking? This group of people has really been working, some of them since January, Cindy, on helping us build our process and then implement the rigorous process to bring this information to you tonight. Some of those members will be speaking in this evening. So when I last presented to you back at the end of May, I provided information about our project, about the work that we've been doing, who is engaged in it, as well as an update on the products that we were considering. I'm not going to go back over that this evening, but just to give a little refresher on that information that we shared. I'd like us to certainly go back to. Some of this is referenced in the background materials that I provided to you. I do, however, want to highlight some of the strategic priorities that we're working to address through our careful selection of instructional materials. The first is that we're really working to develop the confidence of our students in core academic subjects and provide them with exposure to learn in multiple disciplines. In addition, we're trying to address the fact that literacy is foundational. Our students need to be able to develop strong levels of fluency, vocabulary, and the ability to comprehend what they read in order to achieve high levels of confidence in their subjects and beyond. Another strategic priority as we work with our students is to ensure that we're providing the quickest possible path to fluency in academic English so that our students can perform at high levels when in high school, and so that they have access to a rigorous course of study while in high school, so that they can leave high school truly prepared for succeeding in college. Another of our strategic priorities is to work to bring down our level of attrition of teachers. As you know, we turn over a very high number of teachers on an annual basis. When asked, our teachers who leave often frequently cite a lack of needed instructional materials with which to teach effectively. So as we seek out those resources, we're mindful of how we can best support our teachers and provide them with access to materials that are effective, efficient, and supportive of their success and that of their students. Finally, in terms of strategic priorities, I was thinking of the CompuGirls program that I was at the meeting when the robot came and spoke at the podium, great, inspiring meeting. And that's one example of the kind of 21st century learning that we want to be able to provide for our students so that we really are a destination environment for high quality, technically specific, technically advanced, 21st century learning for our students. We want to ensure that we're using technology to the highest possible degree to provide our students with real-time access to information, relevant content that's meaningful to them and to their lives, and that's connected to the world outside of school. So since I was last before you at our update on the 26th, we engaged in a series of meetings that folded into or ended our days of our curriculum gathering process. We also engaged in a rigorous process to try to engage our community in giving us feedback on the options that we were considering. So with more information on that, I'm going to invite forward my esteemed colleague, Marian Goodman, to describe our process for engaging in the community feedback collections.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. Boyle. As Eric just mentioned, I'm Marian Goodman. I'm the Special Projects Director for Literacy, and I'm happy to report that I'm probably the only person that's sitting in this room today that has been in a textbook adoption 3 times over. So I'm well qualified to talk about how we have included our community, and I'm very happy to talk about that today. So to ensure community feedback, we use, and when I talk about community, we're talking about our education as well as our parent community. We employed SurveyMonkey. We advertise through Facebook, the district website. We also had robocalls provided to all parents, inviting them to come visit to Campus Room 109, where all the materials were housed. And as you can see by our SurveyMonkey feedback, 6 of our 9 schools were well represented, giving us feedback. Yeah.
So you had no feedback from what it thought you were doing?
That is correct. That is correct. Yes. So when one of the questions, what is your primary role in the school district, you can see that we had the large majority of community members giving us feedback was our educational community, with 4 parents providing us, serving us with feedback.
How was the survey distributed?
So it wasn't actually distributed, so what we had was an open invitation for parents to come or community members to come to room 109. We had computers set up right there with the survey, so upon leaving, and let me get that in a second, but I'll repeat myself again. Upon leaving, we asked for their feedback, written survey.
Okay.
So from looking at this, you can see that there was a very high representation from teacher level, and then looking at the representation from our teacher community, you can see that all levels of teachers came to look at the materials and provide us with some feedback. Now, so now I wanted just to kind of paint a picture for you. So as our community came into room 109 in Compass, to come to explore, they were invited to come in. If you will, all the materials were placed around the room with placards, and all the materials were arranged by publishers. Placards with the publisher's name and the grade levels that were pertinent were for easy access so that they can see very quickly what publishers were being represented there. The community was invited to examine any and all materials. We did not say go to this one or that one. They were just free to explore as much and for as long as they wanted to. There was no time limit. And again, prior to leaving, we did ask that they take a few minutes and fill out the survey monkey so that they can provide us with some valuable feedback, which our adoption committee really wanted to take into account. And as you can see, upon examination, the community showed support for National Geographic. So our adoption committee took the feedback into consideration and closely and carefully evaluated National Geographic, just like we did with all the other materials, using the IMET tool. Some of the findings from some of the narrative that we could see were some of the quotes that you see here. And I just wanted to point out the one from Great Images. My daughter really likes the school. I'm pretty sure that this was a parent that I actually had an opportunity to speak to. She is a parent from Biltmore. Her daughter is a special needs student, and she was very concerned. She wanted to know what teacher guides were going to point to the teacher so that she would know how to teach a special needs child. So I was delighted to be able to answer questions right there on the spot. And when I asked her daughter, which of these programs do you like? She quickly pointed to McGraw-Hill and said, I like it because I like the books, and she pulled books right out of the shelf and showed me what she liked about them, and it was the images. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Duper.
If you want to go back and just provide one point of clarification on this. So the question we asked was, which set are you providing feedback on? This was a survey that they could go into. We had computers set up in the room, and we gave them a slip of paper with this survey on it so they could log in and get us feedback. All the materials were set up around the room, and they could give as much feedback as they wanted to. So if you were going to go and do it, you could work with one set of instructional resources, give feedback, work with another, give feedback, It's a very, in my opinion, it's a very challenging process to seek and to give in-depth feedback on these resources. When you're looking at them, it can be hard to really know and be able to navigate the tools. So this, what we saw here is that the feedback we got, people were drawn to National Geographic. So we got more feedback on National Geographic. It doesn't necessarily mean that there was a greater level of support. It's just that they went to that, they said, oh, I recognize, we don't know, it could be, I recognize the name, or the pictures are effective, but for some reason, that's the ones we got the most feedback. But when you look generally, and I provided you with the narrative of all the feedback we got, it's all pretty favorable. There are attributes of all of the resources that stood out to people. So just to clarify, that's not necessarily level of support, but rather frequency of feedback. Before I move on, are there any questions that I can respond to about the feedback process, data?
You just have the materials there, not the vendors themselves.
That's correct. So the idea was to be able to provide a ongoing series of opportunities for people to peruse the resources at their leisure, at their comfort. We had the rooms available. We had a staff member present in the room who could help with light questions and help with the computer and help collect surveys, and who could get somebody from the committee into the room if we needed to do a deep dive. But no members were present for this. So if there are no further questions, I'll move on. So I provided you with a copy of, in both our last presentation and I think this time, our instructional materials evaluation toolkit, which is that very thick rubric that we use to evaluate the instructional resources. It includes a set of non-negotiables, alignment criteria, and then what we call our indicators of superior quality. The indicators of superior quality are both, they come with that toolkit, and then we add our own local indicators based on the experience of the committee and the perspectives of the committee on what they knew were needs based on the constituents that we represent. So what I'm going to share with you now is a summary of the findings. I have a full listing that I prepared that you have access to. When we've got to our full deep evaluation, and it took us typically 2 meetings to get through each set of materials because we were really looking for evidence of alignment or non-alignment to all these indicators on the tool. We narrowed down to the products from 4 particular vendors, even though we started our process with samples from, I think we did an initial request from about 75 different vendors. By the time we got into this deep dive, we were looking at products from 4 vendors. So we began with Amplify, which offers 2 products, one knowledge product and the PLA, Amplify ELA product. And we found that those really did not meet our local indicators for ease of use. So we found ourselves challenged in the navigation and some of the technical aspects, like the tech tools, were harder for us to use than we thought they should be, and therefore we did not align in that way to our user. We then, and as mentioned by Miriam, spent a lot of time with National Geographic. They offer 2 products that we look closely at, Reach and Inside, and they do have very engaging photos. And as you would expect from National Geographic, they're robust. And we kind of joked a little bit as we got into the process how fortunate are we to be able to look at so many different high quality examples. But when we finished our analysis, we found that with the National Geographic resources, we were not seeing an appropriate level of text complexity. And that's one of the things that we have to address with the instructional shifts of the College of Career Ready standards is complex text that not only because of the way the text is written, but because of what kids have to do with it, is really a high level indicator that we were looking for. So we were out of line. We also found that there was a lack of sufficient text-dependent, text-specific questions in those resources. So for those reasons, we found it. We worked with a K-5 product from Pearson called Ready Gen. Pearson is a well-known, very, very large publishing company. We really looked at Pearson. What we started to see was, as we worked, our rubric is divided into two parts. There's a K2 and a 312 rubric. And our K2 group found that Pearson really did seem to have a lot of alignment for their needs to the indicators that we established. But as we went up through grades 3, 4, 5, and especially in 6, 8, we found that the alignment was not strong enough for our indicators. So we didn't, I'm not going to highlight all of them, but they're here. Lack of explicit foundations instruction. We're really looking for tools that would help our teachers teach more effectively. There's a big difference between materials that assign or offer activities to students and activities that scaffold the teachers' work with students. These resources have a lack of foundational instructional scaffolding for staff. And they did not adequately address language standards, which are critical to the development needs of our students. ReadyGen really, I think because of the strength from some of our K2 perspectives, we had high hopes. However, at the end of the day, when the analysis was in, we really did see that there were some big gaps to our indicators. When it came to the 6-8 product, absolutely the concern was that it did not reflect the rigors of the college and career readiness standards, did not have the right distribution of text types, genres, all of this was critical to success in high school. We analyzed products offered to us by McGraw-Hill. We analyzed 2 products. Wonders is a K5 or K6 product. Study Sync is actually a 612 product that can be used at high schools. It's actually been adopted for use in grades that are 7 through 12 in Paradise Valley in the coming school year. And we looked very closely at it. What we found is that McGraw-Hill has done an outstanding job of reworking the Wonders program and their 2.0 solution, which will be published in January as a 2017 copy, really have the highest degree of alignment to our indicators of superior quality, to our non-negotiables, and to our alignment criteria. The Study Sync for 6-8 also have the highest degree of alignment to our criteria. In fact, they met all of the indicators that we rated. So this is where we got to after, I think, our last meeting was 3 hours. Well, it was like, we started our meeting at 3:30, 4 o'clock, and we were there at 7, we're like, okay. But the reason, we didn't just get to the decision so we could get out of the room. We actually really agonized over the sources of evidence and the deep dive into those resources in order to be able to ethically and objectively report findings to you. So at this time, I'm going to invite forward members of our committee, beginning with Chelsea Sweet, to share some of their reflections on those resources.
Could you go back to the slide? You had the people reviewing it and which ones they reviewed. How many were drawn to McGraw-Hill? You understand what I'm
Yeah.
Okay.
So, which you like to do that?
Yeah.
So McGraw-Hill is the orange one.
Okay, that's just the.
Yeah.
And what did the community teachers, people who did that, what did they think of that one? What feedback did you get from them?
So we just look at the pages. So it's here. So some of the ones, yeah, we just had to. So one of the questions that we asked was to describe the strengths of these instructional resources. So all the questions we asked are open because we felt like we could get a good sense of what they were drawn to, what they were picking up on, and what they liked and didn't like. It wasn't quite frankly sure how to use like a 1 to 5 scale and really get anything that would be helpful to somebody giving feedback or something. So some of the things that we said were great images, and I got really nice the words, so we said that one. The nonfiction text, rigorous vocabulary, online materials, vivid pictures. Again, strengths. I like the textbook and other materials. The teaching guides include clear, common core aligned objectives as well as clear I do, we do, you do instructions for each lesson. The resources such as the books have important words like sight words already highlighted inside the book, and the stories that have pictures and the sentences include pictures and words, making early reading skills easier to do. Provides numerous engagement strategies, appealing to a student's vision, focuses on comprehension, very easy guidance for teacher instructional planning. As I was going through the textbook, I saw strong similarities with our Hope Mifflin materials, which was our 2006 adopted. The familiarity of the scope and sequence with assessments are well organized. The Common Core standards are included and easy to follow. The thematic units will also strengthen greater understanding of the text using guidance strategies. For Kinder and First, I think this is a great program because, particularly in First, it lays out everything for the teacher. I think it seemed to be weaker in the upper grades, but the teaching students how to read. This appeared to be the best program. For weaknesses, there's more, but
Yeah. So a couple of ones prior to this one, teachers were the biggest group that gave you feedback. There was a small from parents, a small group. So basically, what you just read is probably teachers' comments. So they seem to like it.
it looks like they got 2 parent responses on the document. The rest were from teachers. Yes, it is generally very positive. I've been scanning through this and reading it closely. Nothing really negative stood out. We asked them to talk about weaknesses. Something, nonfiction text with common core objectives, listen to that. The rigor of the material may not be as high as I believed it would be. That some of these areas have been addressed as weaknesses. We think really where the company has addressed with their 2.0 revision of these materials, because as a committee, our team was really, I think, saw some of these same weaknesses, but when we had access to the 2.0 revision, we were able to see that a lot of these have been addressed. One person says, I needed more time to find any one weakness. The upper grade students didn't have any materials that stood out to me. The National Geographic program did a better job with the materials for the vision of this is that this is a K-5 kind of adoption, but they are upper grade 6.
This is kind of on your question. If the committee found that McGraw Hill did a great job on K through 6, and National Geographic did a better job on the middle school, can you split it like that, or do you have to go with one to completely flow?
You can say it like that. Okay. Last time our district did an adoption, we did that as the method that was used. We did a K6, Houghton Mifflin, and 7-8 was goals, my part was from middle school. So 2 completely different publishers,
Right.
2 different sets. And that was on the table for the committee's thought. We evaluated them separately, let every program and publisher stand on their own merits, their own alignment. I think to reflect on the work of the committee, the study sync product from McGraw Hill stood out to the committee evaluating much more quickly than the K-5 did. So if we were going to see a split recommendation, it quite likely would have been that study sync would have been the middle grades recommendation, and that we would have maybe had the Pearson product for K-5, or potentially the National Geographic there. But because when we looked at middle school materials in particular, one of the things that was observed by the committee was that heavy emphasis on literary text, which is important, but to be really successful with the college and literary standards, you have to have a good mix of access to literary and informational text as well. And so has done a very strong job at moving in that direction. And it's not a silly question, that's a very common thing to do. There are some benefits of going with a single vendor. You get some additional support, sometimes with pricing, sometimes with PD, and certainly with implementation. So with that, I'm going to jump forward now to our teachers, our committee members who wish to their thoughts of these. Please welcome Ms. Chelsea Smith.
Hi. As Eric said, my name is Chelsea Sweet. Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, and Dr. Boyle. I just finished my third year teaching at Monte Vista, and I'm so excited to be in my new school. I teach kindergarten ELD, and I'm speaking tonight on support for the new teachers that Wonders offers. As a new teacher in the district when I started, it was difficult for me to find a lot of rigorous materials and resources to use with the Houghton Mifflin, and how to do stuff just out of college is kind of confusing. But now with Wonders 2.0, I noticed that it will provide new teachers with specific plans and procedures and more like how to when they're doing things. Something that is nice is it shows the teacher how to teach specific skills to the student, such as how to do a close read and even how to have collaborative conversations in the classroom, which are so important to our English language learners. It also has the clear objectives and the standards stated within the lessons, which make it so much nicer for a new teacher when they're planning and they don't know what specifically to put in their lesson plans. It also has a lot of resources built in for students for all different levels and promotes a lot of differentiation. They have 4 different levels, so they have an approaching level, an on level, and a beyond level, and also a specific level for English language learners. So they have all 4 of those, and something that really stood out to me within these levels, say if they're level readers or they're guided reading books, all the titles will be the same for all the levels, but then they just look slightly different. So there's students who might be in the approaching level, but they don't realize that their book that they're reading is different from the students that's on the beyond level. I think that for new teachers, when they have something that's more aligned, when I went to ASU, they taught us all on the college and career readiness standards, and then when I came out, it was hard. Like I was always searching on Teachers Pay Teachers and all those things to find the resources that I needed to use, and how was I actually going to do any of this stuff. But this has it more laid out for teachers, so they'll feel more relaxed, and it'll be easier for them in the classroom so they're not so panicked about classroom management and doing their lesson plans and putting their classroom together on their first year. So I really liked it.
A question. Thank you, Ms. Sweet. So I recall those questions for you.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know what that was.
Yeah. I've been out of the classroom 8-9 years, a long time, but I too struggled for 2 years to find materials, and I feel like I taught on the moon compared to what is here. So we didn't have curriculum or textbooks or anything. So my experience was looking off the internet, trying to print stuff off, creating my own. It's very stressful. Can you just tell us a little bit more what you've been doing for 3 years to manage without, not to the benefits that this has, but what's the day in the life like now? If you can paint that picture for me, that would be really
Okay, so previously, well, I remember when I first started, I was among a team where there was 2 senior teachers who had taught for several years together, but they taught mainstream. And the teachers that I started teaching with, we were all brand new and we all taught ELP together. And our instructional coach was also brand new at her job. So it was terrifying almost at least we had each other and we became very good friends, but we were like, what are we gonna do? We did use Pinterest a lot, Teachers Big Teachers. We used some of the Houghton Mifflin things. If I was doing reading, I would use the Alpha Friends and I'd go through that. But then, I'd bring in my own worksheets that were like, what sound begins with S? Because the Houghton Mifflin practice books were like not rigorous and they could do them in like 1 second. And it was just, and then I had to come up with creating my own literacy centers. So on top of finding your own resources, you also have to find like, what am I going to do during reteach that makes, these kids. And it's the same with math and all those other subjects, but especially grammar was difficult to find because I know that not everywhere has to teach that and so specifically as it does here. So again, it was a lot of creating my own stuff and then sharing. And then the thing I noticed too is I then joined committees like curriculum and I was on this committee. And then you make friends with other teachers and then you get to share that stuff in it. So I know there's a lot of great teachers that were feeling the same thing I was. Mm-hmm. And when I was new, there was like 100 of us that were new together. Yeah. And so we go to those meetings and I'd be like, and they say, they'd say, do you have anything with this subject or what are you doing for phonics or how does this work in your classroom? And so, those bonds too are something that I did enjoy making and doing all that stuff too.
So this would, I might be putting words in your mouth, but I'm just trying to synthesize it here. Would reduce anxiety, yes, and give you a sense of quality control.
Mm-hmm. And something, like I said, when I first came to, I didn't know that, I didn't know how I was going to write a lesson plan, what it was going to look like, what my principal really wanted from me, and they said, this is CT4S, you have to have your objective and all this stuff. And so I was like, I don't know what that's supposed to look like, but in Wonders, you open up the teacher book, and it's kind of like when you open it up, it's like, hey, here's your whole group stuff, but it has, here is your Common Core State Standard, here is an objective that you can do, and then it's like, here's what the teacher can say, reminder, this works for those ELL students, kind of adding little things in that you need help. And so, some teachers might want to read it exactly as it is, but now that I've been here for 3 years, I'm going to use it a ton, but I might not read it word for word. That's what I think.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, and Dr. Boyle. My name is Sarah Beth George, and I am our district's instructional coach for English language development. And I wanted to speak a little bit about the support that Wonders 2.0 provides to all of our teachers. And while reviewing all of the resources, our committee considered the current needs of our district as well as those of our teachers, both beginning and veteran. So as a district, we really recognize the need for quality resources with writing, specifically how to teach writing to students. We've received feedback throughout the year that our teachers are really craving these high quality writing resources. And one feature of Wonders that we gravitated toward was the framework provided for the teaching of writing. So there is specific attention given to the writing process, and there are many, many lessons available that focus on revising and editing from a student's perspective. Our committee was really excited to see that Wonders 2.0 has exemplars from all genres that students can use to guide their writing, and also rubrics that teachers can use to create lessons based on specific skills and also to evaluate student writing. So we also noticed multiple models of how to revise and edit for specific skills. There are actually annotated pieces of writing that teachers can just put on their document camera and talk through with students. So these exemplars, rubrics, and models are aligned to our standards and will save teachers planning time while also serving to enhance our students' learning. There are also other key features of Wonders 2.0 that we really appreciated, such as the online student-led research modules, high-quality text-dependent questions for all reading selections, and explicit routines for conducting close reading. We really appreciated the digital platform for professional development opportunities, specifically that there are videos available through Wonders 2.0 that model lessons in authentic classrooms. So teachers can use those to see what a lesson might look like or what students might need to be doing for specific lessons, and coaches can also use those to observe with teachers and provide them feedback on lessons that they're seeing together so that they can then produce that in their classroom. So we really found that a lot of these components have the potential to benefit our teachers and therefore all of our students.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board, Mr. President, Dr. Boyle. My name is Katie Cartier. I am the instructional coach at Loma Linda School, and this is my 12th year in the district, and this will be my 3rd year as instructional coach. Chelsea talked a little bit about the teacher perspective of planning and just all that goes into planning when we don't have aligned resources. So it truly takes a long time for them to do this, a long time for all of us to make sure that teachers are ready for instruction each day. And what happens in that process is that because it takes so long for us to just, we have about 7 tabs open on our computer at once: Learn Zillion, the Arizona College and Career Readiness Standards, Engage New York, all of these different tabs just so that we can decipher the standards. Then from there, we start putting all the puzzle pieces in place so we truly understand the standard, and then we can start the task analysis process. From there, we kind of run out of time in our planning meeting. It's only 45 minutes long, and then teachers are asked to go off on their own and do all of the things that Chelsea talked about. Creating documents, finding documents that really are not research-based. They're created by other teachers, and a lot of them are really good, but they're not, they don't have a quality control to them. So with McGraw-Hill and Wonders, the planning process will be so much more streamlined so that we can concentrate on the actual teaching and learning that's going to happen in the classrooms. What will it look like? What will it sound like when we're in front of kids? So I just wanted to show you this is one of the planning templates that they provide online. And there are multiple different ways that you can go about planning, but this is for a 60-minute block. And each week or each concept follows kind of the same routine. So you'll see something nice about this. This is a week, kind of a week at a glance, and you can see how on day 1 of instruction, they're introducing the concept. Then they have a listening and comprehension. And it just kind of follows, and I'm just looking at this blue area throughout the week, and it follows similarly each time. If one of the other features of this is that if I didn't have time, let's say we have an assembly on Thursday, because that happens, I can drag it to a new area and drop it in there. Or I can move it to my holding bin, and it basically says, you still have to teach this and figure out a time to do it, but you don't have to do it right then. Something else from here is when I click on these, this takes me to my daily instruction and what it looks like. So when we were sitting there agonizing over writing these perfect objectives, making sure that they're at a really well scaffolded but high level of rigor and critical thinking, they're actually right here for them. So in this specific lesson, students are asked to visualize text to increase understanding. The academic language or academic vocabulary is here for us. The differentiation piece that we're always trying to get to, but we really don't ever have time to plan for, is here for us. And then notes. From here, there's detailed lesson plans that, like Chelsea said, you can follow or you can adapt to your own teaching. Something else that's going to be different for the planning process is that Wonders and McGraw-Hill really very much align to Charlotte-Danielson and what we've adopted as a district. Specifically when it comes to Domain 1, the planning and preparation for instruction. If teachers were to use just what is presented, they would probably, most of them would fall into that level 3 proficient teacher. And from our research, we know that that proficient teacher, that level 3 is really what we're aiming for, and the distinguished teacher level 4 would be even more of that. StudySync specifically really incorporates those interdisciplinary units, which are what those level 4 distinguished teachers are doing from Danielson. So through the adoption and what we're looking at in the support of McGraw-Hill, Wonders, and StudySync, we're going to allow our teachers to spend more time discussing instruction and teaching and less time creating materials and agonizing over writing lessons or finding something on the internet that they didn't have time to read the night before and then putting it in front of students only to find out that, oh, there's like 7 words in here that my kids aren't ready to read, or this is not at the correct lexile level. It's all done for us. Any questions?
Good evening, Mr. President, Governing Board members, Dr. Boyle, I'm Suzanne Silly. I'm the Education Technology Specialist and Coach for the district. Today's students are 21st century students. They've never known a world without the internet, cell phones, and video games. They're growing up in a world where the demands of professional, personal, and public lives are more and more complicated each year. A world that is innovation and creativity driven, where the job market rewards that creativity, flexible thinking, on-the-job learning, and a comfort with the use of technology. A globally connected world filled with dizzying amounts of information, communication through social media, and involvement in global initiatives. These trends are gaining in momentum, not slowing down. Our students need to become more globally aware, learn to effectively navigate in the digital world, and become engaged 21st century citizens. The Partnership for 21st Century Learning has identified 4 essential elements that 21st century students need to master: content knowledge and 21st century themes, learning and innovation skills, information media and technology skills, and life and career skills. The Textbook Adoption Committee has identified StudySync to be an appropriate resource for Creighton School District middle school students to develop these skills. The StudySync curriculum presents students with attractive entry points that lead students into activities that involve reading, writing, and thinking. Each text is previewed much like a coming attraction at a movie theater to engage and motivate the students for learning. The lessons are created with the adolescent brain in mind, with achievable step-by-step tasks that build in complexity. The lessons contain visual and auditory supports. Producer and director George Lucas has stated, "Today, we work with the written or spoken word as our primary form of communication. But we also need to understand the importance of graphics, music, and cinema, which are just as powerful and in some ways more deeply intertwined with young people's culture." StudySync also provides engaging simulations that model critical thinking and textual analysis. The StudySync reading selections are accompanied by Sync TV videos of students discussing the theme, technique, and meaning from the text. StudySync is relatively accessible, has diverse texts including classic and contemporary works, and an appropriate balance of both fiction and nonfiction. The StudySync curriculum clearly aligns with the Common Core and National Council of Teachers of English Standards, but also reaches well beyond those. It has a strong reading base that includes a wide variety of text types. StudySync also includes blasts that highlight breaking news developments, current events from around the world. A blast is composed of several interactive components designed to help students gather information and construct informed opinions using real-world read-write connections. Blast articles can be leveled online into different lexile levels to accommodate each student's needs. They include research links so that students can delve deeper into a topic. They can take an online poll. They can fill out a questionnaire or share an opinion in 140 characters or less. That's Twitter. That's global and social media connections in a safe environment. StudySync units and lessons follow a similar pattern. They introduce the topic which helps develop context for the reading. They do a first read followed by think questions, a close read of the text followed by focus questions, a writing prompt at the end. Essential skills are interwoven throughout the lessons, and each unit ends with an extended writing prompt based on the learning from that unit. During the reading, students can use the embedded tools to highlight, annotate, and take notes on the reading passages. Additionally, study sync includes explicit vocabulary instruction, ongoing formative assessment, summative final assessment, an extensive growing library, a wide variety of writing tasks, and frequent updates. Since it is online, not print, it can be updated and kept up to date for our students. There are a lot of tools available for our teachers. Lesson plans that are easily accessible both by first-year teachers as well as experienced teachers. They have built-in management and assessment tools for the teachers. The assessments can be made assignments, can be made based on an individual student's needs, so that with an ease for differentiation in the classroom. Teachers can develop their own customized assignments, and they can share those assignments across the school or across the district. So Study Sync is a new instructional approach that focuses on higher levels of engagement, personalized instruction, and real-time experiences for our middle school students. Thank you.
So, everybody take a stretch. Sorry, I realize this is going on. It's not our intent to overwhelm you with the time. Inefficient, because we just have a lot of information. So, now we're taking you through these reflections and we've introduced these sets of resources as they're where we've gone, or where our process has happened. We want to give you some additional information about the thoughts around implementation. So, Study Sync in particular is basically something that was built technology for. So it was built technically first, as opposed to most resources which are built with a text editor that's built thinking about it. Study Sync has a print companion, so it's not necessary to have a computer in hand to be able to implement the majority of the content, and that comes with a purchase of this instructional resource. So we know that exists, but when we started our task as a committee, one of the things that we were charged with was to really think about, and I think I said this on our last update, think about what our students need to develop in terms of competence, in terms of skill, for true college and career readiness. And then with that, what kinds of technology tools will accelerate them on that path to competence development. So what's happened is we've started to blend those two perspectives. One around competence we want kids to develop, and two around the technology that we want to use to fuel their growth and fuel their development. So in thinking about studies and what it will take to fully adopting our technology team has been hard at work to consider the question, what would we have to do in order to implement these high quality instructional resources at their fullest by putting a technology device in the hands of every 6th, 7th, and 8th grade student. So it's more on that concept, Mr. Edwards.
Thank you, Eric. Governing Board President, Governing Board members, Dr. Boyle. As Eric said, concurrent as the Curriculum Review Committee was looking at the online curriculum, the District's Technology Committee was also meeting, anticipating how they were moving along to try and make sure that we could support what they were looking at. So what the Technology Committee did was we reviewed current studies within education technology, project-based learning, blended platforms, more than one platform with more than one delivery method, pedagogical studies and classroom philosophies in digital age, technology planning around preparation and development of educators and administrators, student learning in blended or digital concepts, And then realities. What do we have now? Where are we now? And where do we need to be? We also looked at the state's required long-range goals to provide district policies, curriculum, and resources to ensure that every student has the tools for individualized learning, to collaborate and provide authentic learning experiences for every student, to select and deploy a variety of technology-based tools to provide differentiated instruction for every child, to be able to provide assessment and monitoring, and provide curriculum and resources that ensure personal safety for our students. As you know, that's one of the things that the IT department looks at on a regular basis is with SIPA and COPPA laws in place, we have to make sure that no matter what we do, our students are safe and they're educated on how to be safe in the digital age. So our technology requirements that we came up with to support curriculum was number one, must provide a direct support for learning. Not which device is better, but which device meets the learning goals. Obviously, a BMW or a BMW or Cadillac might be better, but a Ford F-150 might do the job. The goal here is to make sure that cost-effective, best value for the best dollars looked at. Cost-efficient, both in the initial outlay and in the maintenance support, or what we refer to as total cost of ownership. Must be able to support AZ Merit, online testing with ATI, and integration with future content areas. Must provide professional development and hardware setup, hardware support, leadership and administrative training, and philosophy to support administrative coaching. Classroom management, training and support. It's obvious when you put 30 computers in the classroom with 30 kids, classroom management might change just a little bit. Curriculum integration training, specific use of technology with specific curriculum. Instructional coaching, driving the meaningful tech integration in the classroom. Coaching. And it must provide project management and deployment services. So those were all the requirements we were looking at when we went out and started looking at devices. And we were a little bit behind the curriculum group because of the fact that we wanted to wait to see what they were recommending before we made sure that we were looking at the technologies that would support what they were looking at. So the technology that we reviewed and are reviewing: Chromebooks, Samsung, Dell, and Acer's, Surface Pro, Androids, Apple iPads, 16 gigabytes and 32 gigabytes, and then laptops, specifically the Dell Latitude 3150. Some of our results, and these are all not complete. Chromebooks. Chromebooks are a great product. They work great when the wireless is working. When wireless goes down, a Chromebook is an expensive vehicle. Surface Pro turned out to be too small and way too expensive. Androids, obviously too small, won't support AZ Merit or online testing. Apple iPads. We have an awful lot of experience in the district with iPads already. iPad is, per McGraw-Hill, both Wonders and StudySync, it is a viable technology. It works well in the student learning environment. And we've received positive reviews from districts utilizing Wonders and StudySync. Dell laptop, the 3150, is an 11.4-inch laptop. It's a full computer device. It's rubber coated. It's also a viable technology, and we've also seen positive reviews on that as well. So currently reviewing proposals from Apple and Dell. We asked for 1,980 devices. There's 1,950, 6th through 8th grade students. 66 charging carts or security carts. And the reason for that is we've got 64 different 6th, 7th, and 8th grade classrooms. That gives us 2 spares. Project management with asset deployment, asset tagging, and imaging, and professional development for the maintenance staff, all leadership, most importantly for teachers and curriculum. Both companies were told very clearly what we needed professional development-wise, and both of them were putting together professional development programs that take us from A to Z, not only with the administrators and support staff, but most importantly, with the teachers, and aligning it to the curriculum that's currently being recommended. Not just an overall, here's how you use the device, but here's how you use the device with the curriculum you currently have. The next two slides are just examples. They are not final numbers, but it gives you examples of the difference between the two. Dell Latitude 3150s, 2 gigabytes of memory with 256 gig of hard drives. Windows 7 Professional 64-bit, because Windows 10 isn't out yet. Windows 8.1 is not quite there. Quantity of 1980, 66 cards, professional development, project management, extended warranties and service. Came in at $766,000 for on a 3-year purchase to own, $1 to buy out of $264,000 a year. The next proposal was from Apple. Again, these are just generalized proposals. They're not done in refining them. 2,000, they come in groups of 10, and they start discounting their support when you buy 2,000 or more. So we went with the 2,000 number, which is 20 more than we had originally asked for. 66 cards, 600 keyboards. We test online with keyboards as far as AZMerit goes, but we don't test 3 grade levels at the same time in a school. So the largest grade level in 6, 7, and 8 would be around the 600 kid number. So 600 keyboards would allow us to test an entire grade level in AZMerit with an iPad. Provides professional development, project management, extended warranties, and service. We've had an awful lot of great experience with Apple on their professional development. They're very deep in the educational realm. Their initial price came in at $1.2 million with a lease to own $416,000 per year. So considerations that the technology committee, we're providing all this information out to the technology committee electronically because most of them are off contract, but they're reviewing all of this with us. The considerations for a final recommendation is, what do we have in our current population? What do we have currently in the district? Maintainability, maintenance, service, total cost of ownership. Funding availability. What monies are we going to have out of the capital override to fund these resources? Cost of the device, professional development provisions for service staff, administration, teachers, and curriculum. And then project management provisions for asset management, imaging, and deployment services. At the same time, the technology committee is also looking at, okay, if you do larger numbers of mobile devices within the district, you obviously have to make sure that your wireless system is robust enough to cover it, that your infrastructure will support it. So that's what we're looking at as well. At the same time, you just passed an agenda item that approved new copiers, approved a new phone system. So some of those things are also coming out of those resources that we currently have. So they're looking at the overall big picture of how can we support. I can be honest with you, we've run the numbers tentatively. I don't have exact numbers for you tonight because we don't have exact numbers from our vendors. The 3-year purchase to own on both products is within the realm of what we have in our current required capital override budget that was in the motion. Any questions?
Could you go back to the slide, the Dell, was it the PC version? The notebooks, I just wanted to write that down.
Dell
Yeah,
Latitude
yeah,
3150.
yeah.
And I can actually, I've got one in my office if you want me to bring my samples.
Thank you.
So, so that means that this, this can be installed, these textbooks. That's why you're going with the Dell over the Chromebook. You mentioned wireless being an issue.
Correct.
For the Chromebooks. Because you can only, I'm assuming for the Chromebook, because I have a Chromebook, but you know, you're totally right. It doesn't have a lot of memory. if you go somewhere where the wireless is spotty, it's not gonna work very well. So that means on the Dells it can be installed, but on the Chromebook, there's not enough memory to install it, is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
The Chromebook requires wireless to access, I mean, you can't even
Yeah.
access an application without wireless.
Right, exactly.
At the same time, both the iPad and the Dell both have the capability of downloading materials from StudySync or Wonders so that the students can look at it that way. So that's why we looked at that. Chromebooks are a great product. At the same time, we were also looking at, okay, if you have a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade one-to-one program, we have any grade level one-to-one program such as our flipped classroom. Sooner or later, are we going to make a decision to allow our kids to extend their learning day by taking that device home? Not, some of our kids at home don't have wireless, so the Chromebook wouldn't facilitate going home in an environment that doesn't have wireless.
And you said that both the Apple and the PCs are within the budget, but
On the 3-year lease to own, they're within what we believe is going to be our budget, leaving us room for infrastructure support for wireless, and at the same time still being able to do a reasonable replacement that we do for teacher laptops, as well as in classroom, because remember, Wonders is going into K-5, so we still have to look at what are we going to do in K-5. I can't have 12-year-old computers sitting on a desk in K-5 if they're not going to work. So we still have to have enough money to support the rest of the program going on. Can we do it all? No. But remember that our capital override is for 7 years. So the technology committee is planning this out of what are we going to do over the next 3 to 7 years so that we can make sure that we continue making that movement in the 21st century.
oh, is there another, there's gotta be another tablet that's cheaper than an iPad, that would be able to handle the textbook option.
We did look at HP's, we did look at Samsung's, we looked at, is it Acer or Asus? Acer. And cost analysis was about the same, if not a little bit cheaper than, or about the same or a little more expensive than the Dell 3150. The Dell 3150 was the only device we found out there that was rubber coated. And I'll bring one in to show it to you. I accidentally knocked it off my desk the other day and nothing happened. The Dell rep was a little upset, but it's nice.
But I mean, even compared, I feel like what is it called? It's like the HP Surface Pro, maybe?
The Surface Pro could not support AZ Merit, nor was the size, and the cheapest Surface Pro we saw was $799 each.
They're too expensive.
Yeah.
So,
I'm really not familiar with PC platform. I'm an Apple person, 100%. But the cost is obviously quite a bit more. What's the platform like on the, like, is that getting more generic? It would just concern me that I feel like for kids using them, it seems like Apple is just out there more. I mean, is the platform becoming more generic?
but actually, if you take a look, Apple products tend to be purchased by wealthier individuals, and they are cost prohibitive. So, I mean, if I were to have to choose between PC and Apple, I mean, I agree that sometimes Apple may be prettier and a little bit more user-friendly, and for sure, if you're doing more specialized things, you can totally do that with an Apple that maybe you wouldn't be able to do with a PC. But I feel like for students, it's good, first of all, to be versatile. But what I've seen with kids, especially coming from the Creighton district, who use Apple products, I feel like Apple's kind of creating little future customers, and it kind of sets them up to be pigeonholed into only Apple products. Where if you are introduced to PCs, you can use a PC anywhere. It doesn't matter what the brand is. You know what I mean? So I feel like it would make more sense for most of the kids in our district to know how to use PCs, because life and go to college and they're starting college students, buying a PC laptop is going to be a lot cheaper for them than buying an Apple. So,
From an educational technology perspective, most kids, whatever you put in front of them, they're going to use it better than us. Number two, to be honest with you, the convergence of Apple and Windows over the last 10 years has been fantastic. Most kids that are in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grades, I can put, if they've never seen a PC, I can put it in front of them, and in 15 minutes they can operate it. If they've never seen a Mac, I can put a Mac in front of them and they can operate it. Both of them have their goods. Both of them have their bads. I can honestly tell you that we have more older Apple products within our district that have, as we say, work fine, last a long time. Apple tends to be a little bit more expensive, but at the same time, Apple comes with an outstanding reputation, comes with outstanding professional development. If you look at the commercial world and look at the community outside of an Apple district, you're going to find that the majority, 60% to 70% of people out there in the community are using PCs. That doesn't mean that, and that's why I keep going back to, this is not what's, in your opinion, the best idea or the best product. Is what's best for the learning goals of our students, and we have to make a decision based upon the learning goals of our students, not whether you like an Apple or you like a PC. I go back to 13 years ago when I was hired, I made one promise. That promise was not to walk in and say, we're going to go all PC, we're going to go all Apple, we're going to go with what best supports the learning environment, what best supports the teacher's comfortability, and how that teacher can best serve those students. If it's with a PC, then that's what we'll do. If it's with an Apple, that's what we'll do. And that's what the technology committee is looking at. Obviously, price is going to have to play a decision here, especially in our current capital environment, where we are very limited in the amount of funding that we have. We have to make that decision. A large part of that decision making is going to be cost.
And I would assume that the software works the same regardless of the platform. Like it should look identical.
Study Sync and Wonders are both web-based platforms or web-based products that are platform independent.
So in conclusion, I left you with background information on the slides about how 2006 compares to 2009 and what that would look like. I just want to highlight for you an example. I went in and I pulled a 5th grade test from my expedition, which was the 5th grade Houghton Mifflin adoption from 2006. We work in this environment called instructional sheets, so we're required by the college curriculum standards. So that's what's really different. But this question, I think, really, this comparison question really sums it up. So there's a selection in the 5th grade, the 9-year-old version of the test. The child is directed to read the selection and then answer, why do you think Mariah chooses the gift? Do you think it was the right choice? Why or why not? Would you like to receive or give the kind of gift that she received, and why or why not? This question 9 years ago was aligned to the set of standards and teaching practices of the time. What I want you to notice is that that set of questions draws the reader out of the text. You can answer those questions with a very superficial understanding of that story. There's nothing about those questions that requires you to demonstrate a deep analysis of the story or any kind of question. In fact, would you like to receive or give the kind of gift Lynn received? Well, yes or no, that doesn't matter. I might like to get that, I might not, and my reasons for wanting that can have nothing to do with the selection. Now, in comparison, this is what our teachers and learners are working with. This is what the standards require. And this is a 5th grade example from Wonders 2.0. So after a close reading experience of a text, the big idea is that the kids are supposed to be able to understand how the author helps the reader understand the future that the character is dreaming about. So in order to get to that big understanding, children are directed to reread the last 5 paragraphs on page 12. So this is after having read once. Go back, reread. find words and phrases that describe the character's plans for the future. So it's directing the reader back into the text and making them or helping them look closely and find the particular words, the particular techniques that the author used to convey or to show why the character was thinking that way about the future. And then it culminates in writing this evidence down and then explaining, creating a written explanation of why the author describes the dreams of the character. So it's a very different kind of analysis and a lot more writing, a lot of citing of evidence, but still a really deep look at the meaning of text. And so this actually just comes out of the resource. This is one of the graphic organizers that's provided, so that the teacher can use this to help the students collect the evidence from them. So with that, I will conclude and but we'll start the discussion. If you have specific requests, I know we brought to you a lot of information tonight. If you have questions for us, if there's specific additional information you'd like, either about the products themselves, our process, or the technology, we'd like to know so that we can come back well prepared to provide you with that information. We are working to address these next steps between now and the time that we return to you. Well, this is a complex, multifaceted project, and there's a lot of moving parts, and we don't want to come up here and our guidance has been along the same lines the whole time. We want to make the best decision, not the fast decision. And part of making the best decision means having some knowledge in place around some good knowledge plans around PD, communications, the rollout, logistics, and that's what we want to work on now. We have to get to here so that we can get to there when we come back. So with that, I'll conclude, but I'd like to know what other questions or discussion would like us to come prepared with the next.
I'll just say, bring like explicit dollars because it's been a little fuzzy and we've entertained different ideas, so help us zero that in.
Absolutely.
Questions for Eric?
Thank you all. Thank you to the committee. Thank you for your sense of time on this agenda.
Thanks for the thoroughness of it and all the committee members speaking. It was really helpful to have all the background stuff too.
And I'd like to bring up Mr. Nolan, who put in a card to share his views as well.
Joan, page from the district, I live in Squawk. Real quick, I was a board member back in the early 200s, 2000s, and we didn't, at that time, I was listening to Ed talk, and Ed had just been hired. The second grade was here, we bought laptops for all the teachers, so it was kind of exciting to see how things have grown. I would just say this as far as we picking adoption. When we were on the board, and I was on the board, every site had a different improvement. I just would shake my head because so many of the kids in the district switch schools inside the district, and it's kind of like, kind of puts them at a disadvantage, and that was one of the goals of the board. And the other thing that I would say is that my question to Ed would have been, Ed, which one do you want? Which one do you recommend? And let him defend that. Because when it comes down to, that's what you pay them for. And their expertise is what you should be driving for. And if one costs more than the other, my philosophy has always been, well, you can't eat like a canary and crap like an elephant. So if you want to be able to do the best, you need to spend the money. And I learned a lot of, I didn't learn that, but I learned a lot of from the lady that this is her last board meeting. And that's really what I'm up here for. Charlotte, when we were on the board and we were interviewing, I remember very succinctly when Charlotte was coming in, I just knew her as assistant superintendent. She was a very good soldier. She didn't say much, but she wrote a lot of notes. And I noticed tonight she still writes those notes. In fact, I saw her in Mass one time and she was writing notes from the sermon, and I go, oh my goodness. But I remember she came in, I distinctly remember what she was wearing. She had on this navy blue suit, collared looking suit, and I was just going, wow. And, all of a sudden my eyes opened up, and we go around and we ask the questions, just like I'm sure you guys did. And Charlotte just blew me away with her answers. And I remember afterwards we were sitting around talking, and Suzanne Schweiger, she was like, when I said that, I said, I would have never known that Charlotte had this all in her because she never said anything. She was a good soldier. And of course, Suzanne was a know-it-all. She said, well, I always knew she was like that. So, but anyways, we ended up hiring Charlotte, and it was a good thing for the district. I'm very proud to be able to say that I was on the board that did hire her. But one of the things that I learned from Charlotte, and I hope that you guys are working with her as a board member, is that, really your job as a board is, trust those that you have hired and then protect them. Whatever you choose in your curriculum or whatever you do, I'll guarantee you, you're going to have 20% of the district who's just going to be so upset. And you're going to hear about it, and you're going to get letters, and you're going to get phone calls, and they're going to come to mind. And that's just the way it is. But you have to have faith in the people that you have in what you choose. And the one thing about education that always is blowing you away, other than the fact that they have committees upon committees upon committees, is that they don't pick their goal and say, this is how I'm getting there, and stick with it. Nothing happens overnight. It's like when we have bad test results. It's like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Well, let's try this group. Maybe over here there's this pedagogy, there's this magic pill. There isn't. It's trusting the programs that you choose and being strong enough and showing enough leadership to just keep plowing right on. And eventually, if you've chosen the right one, you'll get the results that you want. But anyways, I just wanted to say that the last year that I was on the board, and when you meet with the superintendent, I don't think Charlotte and I talked much about school issues. We talked a little bit about curriculum and things like that. But I had some of the greatest conversations with a person that taught me more about a lot of different things. Sitting there and talking to Charlotte. So good luck to you, Charlotte. And you're fortunate you don't have to pick which one of these that you. Good timing when you left. Thank you. Thank you.
Let's move on. Our next agenda item is the approval of the job description for Director of Food Services. And I'd like
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the Governing Board, and Superintendent Boyle. Thank you for having me here this evening. I bring before you a updated job description for the Director of Food Services. As you know, our beloved Linda Doherty is retiring. And so I had the opportunity to pull out the old job description from 1996 and review it. I think you've all received a copy, and then work collaboratively with Ms. Doherty to update the job description in alignment with the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act of 2010. And they're there, the USDA has established minimum professional standards for school nutritional professionals. And these will be effective July 1 of 2015. So in order for our job description, as we go out for a new search of Director of Food Services to be in alignment, we want to make sure that our job description reflects those professional standards. And then Linda also talked to me a little bit about the National Food Services Management Institute, and they have recommendations as well, so they've been incorporated in here as well. I'm not quite sure if you've received the 1996 job description as a reference, but you'll see in there the minimum requirements for education were some minimum requirements with a high school diploma and some college preferred. So we're also upgrading those requirements with a bachelor's degree and having certification for food nutrition. And with that, I'll leave any questions for you.
Great, thank you.
I move the governing board approves the job description of Director of Food Services.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes, thank you. Our next agenda item is the approval of written agreement reached via meet and confer process for 2015-2016 school year. Just for those listening in on our conversation, the framing here is with our new policy that the former board adopted. There was a desire by a board member for the recommendations in its entirety to come to the board, for the board to acknowledge that in its entirety, approve it, adopt it, and have a written agreement. Given that this is new, there was some ambiguity of what that looks like, but we had some legal support earlier, and what we have before us is the 2015-2016 year at a glance document that could serve as the foundation for our written agreement. With that, I'd like to just open it up for conversation.
I personally think it's important that we acknowledge this agreement. We've already had ample opportunity, in my opinion, to be able to take a look at the things that we liked, that we didn't like. We had explanations from members of the meet and confer process, or the relations team, whatever it's called.
Professional Relations Committee. Right, Susan?
Right, just one more thing. And, we've already taken out the part that we didn't like, which of course had to do with the length of the school day. So I personally am ready to move forward with this and acknowledge the 2015-2016 year advance.
So a lot of this for me is very vague and up for interpretation. And so I guess until it was put on the agenda, when we first saw this, Susan went through the things that we needed to take action on. And I feel like we got explanation on those specific things, but we have not had the opportunity to get explanation on some of these other things. So I have concern just about the vagueness of all of it, because I think once we adopt this and it's in writing and it's for every employee to look at, I think it's something that people could interpret differently based on how it's written. So I have a lot of questions about it, and based on the legal advice, I'm not ready to adopt it as is.
So could we bring Dr. Lugo up, and then we can ask,
Yes.
you can ask the specific questions, and we also have Mr. Diaz as necessary.
If she has questions and it's written down, Dr. Lugo will give an explanation. Somebody else can interpret it some other way, and then we can get in trouble. I love the meet and confer process. I think it's great. And bringing things forward to the information. This is what's important to employees, whether they belong to CDA or not. But I agree with Amy that some of the stuff I'm not sure about, because this is how Dr. Lugo interprets it. It might be what the committee wants and how it's interpreted. But somebody else can interpret it some other way, and due to the ambiguity, you can get a bunch of trouble going.
Yeah, so would it be helpful to ask the questions on what we have concerns about? And I think the options we might have are we can adopt some pieces here. I think the other option, for the ones that we don't adopt, we could reject. I don't know if we asked if we could revise them a little bit, but I think it's important, given our policy, to honor the intent of the policy. If we don't like the policy, we can go and revise the policy. So given what we have and given our timing already, I think it would be helpful to seek clarification on the issues that we have questions about, and hopefully leave with an agreement on some of the pieces that we are okay with. Obviously, that's to the will of the board, to a quorum of the board, yes, or majority. But I think that would be a good place to start, and then when it comes to taking action, we'll see what questions we still have. So let's go with the question.
Okay, so one, the capital budget development process, I'm just a little bit concerned that that's even part of the meet and confer process, because that is a budgetary thing. And we just talked about all of the things that we need to do. I mean, I think that feels like micromanaging a little bit, but I'm going to skip that part for now. That's just my opinion on it. Healthcare, we already took action on that, so I'm fine with that. The special ed recommendations are what kind of concerns me. Decreasing contract services, I'm just wondering why and what the ramifications will be for those students.
So when we looked at the budget last year for special education, a number of our parapros in the special education department, one-on-one paraprofessionals, paraprofessionals in the self-contained VE, ED classrooms were from Delta T, a contracted service agency. They charge us over a third more per employee that's contracted through us than our own parapros. So our intent was to decrease the number of paraprofessionals in the classroom, not so much the the speech therapists, the CODA, and those contracted services, because in this environment right now, they're very difficult to find. The fix that we put into place actually helped us with the Affordable Care Act. Remember, we had a working committee looking at the implementation of the ACA and how we were going to fix that. So we analyzed all of our paraprofessionals and our hourly employees who were working more than 30 hours, because remember the Affordable Care Act requires them to then have the benefited positions. So as we analyzed that, we made we did some workforce planning and made some decisions on how many benefited positions the M&O budget and the federal government budget, Title I, Title II, not so much, but also IDEA could support, which is for special education. And we made some decisions. Unfortunately, some people's hours were cut, but other people's hours were increased and then received benefits. So approximately a third of the classroom paraprofessionals will now be receiving benefits, and therefore we were able to attract our own people. So I very, very honestly believe we will meet that goal of decreasing contract services through the use of our paraprofessionals. I'm very confident. They did approve the workforce planning on the policy, where we changed the policies from 40 hours to receive benefits and dropped it, and the board has dropped it to 30 hours. Thank you.
The next one is explore restructuring school design. I'm not sure what that means.
Okay, so that the word explore is key. What it looks at is looking at where our special education classrooms are housed, and are we serving our students in the best way possible. I can give you an example of how that's been done already. We looked at the Compass program with Ms. Morrison, the Director of Special Education, found that those students who were being served in Compass, all but one were being exited to the high school. So they were all 8th graders being promoted. The one student they felt with some support could be served in a ED classroom, but on a regular campus. Therefore, for 1 year only, Ms. Morrison has looked at closing that Compass program. Another example of that would be the preschool program. So
we're very fortunate to receive the preschool grant that requires 10% of the preschoolers who are enrolled in there to also be special education students. So we're looking at if it's a possibility of moving some of those high-performing special needs preschool students into the regular preschool program. So that's an example of exploring the school design restructure.
And the next one also, if you could just explain what that is, explore 40-hour positions for.
Okay. So we explored 40-hour positions, and there are, I think, one for sure. I know there's one for sure, special education, and that's implying for paraprofessionals again. We have on the docket some, and I can't give you exact numbers, I apologize. We have some special education parapros that are slated for about 36 hours per week. And now as we look at our transportation budget, we have bus attendants, and we had to reduce the bus attendance hours to under 25 hours. Remember, we have two employee groups. We have benefited and non-benefited. The benefited employee groups are 30 hours or more. The non-benefited, because we want to keep a little buffer, are 25 hours or less. So the bus attendants from the transportation department have been reduced to 25 hours. We are looking through natural attrition of seeing if some of the special ed paraprofessionals who are benefited already with 30 or more hours want to pick up some more hours per week and ride the bus, therefore eliminating some of the transportation costs.
And review and train for standards for the one-on-one aides.
So that there you see training of psychologists, the psychologist in parentheses there. The implication there is that the psychologists will get together and develop a more in-depth training for our paraprofessionals who work with the one-on-one students, giving a better quality. We see that as a need district-wide of our paraprofessionals needing a stronger training program, professional development.
Okay, and considering the status of Compass, that was already really, that's part of the exploring school design, or is that something different?
No, that is part of what I explained.
Okay. The next one is, I think I understand. And I guess the last one, a standard will be developed for when support is given.
Yeah, it's very vague. Thank you for pointing that out, because we spent 4 days talked in a room together talking about the story and where we came from. But yeah, out of context is very difficult. So what that is alluding to is when whether it's a speech therapist needs a speech therapist assistant support, or a teacher needs support, but developing a standard. When we looked at caseloads across the district, also a standard for our resource teachers, there were some inequities, and so we're asking that the Director of Special Education review those standards. Those inequities aren't a fault of a certain person or entity, but it has to do with certain speech therapists with their clinical competencies, or their Cs, are allowed to supervise speech therapist assistants. So therefore they would have assistants. And we have other speech therapists who, or speech technicians who don't have their Cs, so therefore they cannot supervise an assistant.
So I wonder if something like this could be spelled out a little bit more so that, again, it's not misinterpreted.
Well, we should think about who reads this and what this is for. This falls under a category called special education recommendations. So at the end of the day, this is an agreement that we're making recommendations. It doesn't bind us to do, like if we fail to decrease contract services because A, we didn't have the expertise, we need to find it elsewhere, or whatever the circumstances may be. It's not just special ed decreased contract services. There's no quantifiable things. There's no need for piece, like, it still does read as a recommendation. So I think us adopting it as is an acknowledgement that they had this conversation and that their recommendations, whether we act on it or not, or whatever the outcomes might be, I understand that it's open to interpretation. I also feel like, hey, that's an opportunity for someone to start a conversation. So I think, given that the top line says special education recommendations, I'm okay personally with what's underneath it, even if it is not entirely spelled out, which, by the way, when you do spell it out, that also creates all kinds of, that could become very tricky legally. Could be, depends on what's written there. My own point of view.
The other question I have is when we get to prep time, I feel like that's on here twice. Also, oh yeah, we have on here to study the personal prep time, but there's a recommendation for each site providing 45 minutes of individual planning time on Wednesday after. So do we want to study more prep time? Or are we happy with this recommendation?
So could you point out where it says study more?
Under the length of school
I
day?
feel like everything under there is rejected because it is all part of that main category, like the bullets they no longer apply because that whole thing isn't really on this anymore. It's been wrote down. But, I mean, that's my interpretation of it. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. No, that's my interpretation as well.
So we would just look at the prep time recommendation, which it doesn't say recommendation, it just says is.
Okay. And then, so my other concern is just about the amount of meetings and what we're doing now. Like, is that a change from what has been done in the past? Teachers shall be summoned to no more than 4 meetings per quarter. Principal, it seems like this, again, is sort of tying the hands of principals to me. And it's still somewhat vague too. Principal shall provide written rationale defining the extenuating circumstance. But who then approves whether or not?
So I'll answer your questions in steps. So this issue on prep time is a change from the past. In the past, the teachers were asked to go to 2 meetings typically, but some schools were able to, so it wasn't set in stone that it would be 2, but there's an initial planning meeting as well as a data meeting, and then Wednesdays were for professional development. So but then what's not a change is underneath that bullet, you see where the white bullet is, teachers shall be summoned, and then that subsequent, that's actually a past year's recommendation because one of the conversations that was had is we want to allow the principals, we don't want to, if there's a need, such as the whole 5th grade's math scores are in the tank, thank you, that principal can say, hey, I need to meet with you this week and I need to meet with you at this time during your prep time. So that does allow that. Nobody really approves it. I've been called on that because we had a principal who summoned a group of teachers to a meeting, and we were able to show the principal provided rationale, put it in writing, and we moved forward.
And so the other thing, so in norms and process, the first act, step 3, the first act at the start of next year's meet and confer negotiation is to agree to the revised professional agreement from the subcommittee's work.
So Amy, my thoughts on that are the board, the board itself hasn't had a conversation on what that professional agreement would look like, whether it's cumulative or annual. I think that's where we started going down different paths of understanding what our policy means. So I would suggest that given that we're starting with this as a foundational written agreement, that I would move that we would strike this piece until we figure out what that means and what the board wants to do with that. Because personally, I would be interested to get legal input on what that looks like when we decide what we want it to be. But we haven't had that conversation. What we do know is that the board before us entertained this, and they ultimately left us with an ambiguous term called a written negotiated agreement. And I think where we're at is starting with this as the written negotiated agreement. So I would personally recommend, if we adopt this, to strike that component until we figure out what that means.
And then lastly, since this affects you, human resources will provide professional development to build skills in collaboration and relationships for individuals. Again, it's fairly vague. So.
Very vague. Human resources is still trying to figure out how we're going to do that and which our target audience will be. What the intent was behind this is we recognize that retention is all about building community and leadership, both formal and informal leadership. And how do we build those relationships where we trust one another, where we can openly communicate and come with concerns. And so that's one of my projects to work on, and how we're going to do that. Is it a trainer-to-trainer model? Is it for administrators? Is it for select people who need it?
Could it be contracted out and get some organizing skills with a organization that provides that type of training?
Sure, if the board feels that that's warranted, absolutely.
I guess those are the specific things that I was concerned about, but just generally based on legal advice, I'm still uncomfortable.
So let me entertain, do you have a question?
I feel like right now we have an opportunity to send a message to our teachers and staff and to acknowledge and honor this process in a time where, you know, people may not in education feel like they're appreciated. This is a very collaborative approach. I've participated in maybe for myself. I'm a big believer in collaboration on all levels. And I feel like I just want to say that, you know, I know that it's very important to the people in this district, to the people who work here, and who do take time out 4 days to put this together. And I just want to remind everybody to think about what message we send if we do not approve this for document.
I feel, given where we're at, I mean, one of the things that I didn't share yet is I don't know that I necessarily like the policy. I feel it explicitly, and maybe it's not explicit, but there's an implicit shift away from empowering the superintendent to develop a team and make recommendations. It's more, make sure you have to do this collaborative process. Personally, I don't know that I really like that, but I do want to honor the intent of the policy, and we can fix the policy if we don't like it. That's my orientation. I feel like starting with this as a professional agreement or a written negotiated agreement, to use our policy language, is kind of a big compromise where there are a number of people on very different polar ends of this conversation. So I'm personally invested in adopting something. I think it looks like this, with the exception of the professional agreement language, which still has to be worked out, or, I mean, it still needs to be worked out.
I hear what you're saying, Jeannie, and I want teachers to feel like they're part of the process. And But I think the timing is just off again because we have a new superintendent coming in, and I'd like to give her the benefit of the doubt, the option, and I don't want to have hands tied. And this is just really feels like an unknown to me. You know, I think perhaps the intentions are good. It just, because it's the first time we haven't done it before, we're setting a precedent right now that it will be very difficult to go back if we decide this was a bad decision.
Well, if we didn't, our policy still stands, so I don't know that.
I feel like we're violating policy then, because it says right in our policy that we will approve it, and that, you know, we have 13 days to do so.
It doesn't say that in policy. It says it will be sent. It does not give a date for the board to approve. It just says it's 13 days, something like 30 days or something.
So you're way part of our procedure though. I mean. They result in a written negotiation agreement. And okay, 13 working days after will be submitted to those members in the board. Okay. And so it has been submitted to us, right? We've had several presentations on this, right? We rejected the things that we don't want. This is my understanding of length of day. And now, you know, the reference to the professional agreement, if we want to remove that, right? So I mean, like I said, I think this sends a clear message. I mean, as we were talking, you know, somebody said this is what's important to employees. This is what's important to employees. And now we're making a decision to say, I'm sorry that you don't think that, you know, these things might be important to you, but we only want that.
First of all, we did, you know, part of this was to the teachers' raise. That was part of making for all set. We did that part. And I think that's a clear message. Hopefully it's a clear message. I think what we have here is a new policy that's poorly written at times. Some wordage is not that great. Meeting confer is a great idea. I support it wholeheartedly that you get people together to talk about what's important to them, especially teachers and administration. But y'all never did a written agreement before. And so you're learning, we're learning, and we got to get kind of in the medium. Because like Amy's having problems with some of the wordage and understanding. It's like in its infancy right now.
And I appreciate the intent and that it's all written down and all of and also what was called the professional agreement, that all that history is now in one place where people can find it. I think that's a great move. What worries me is just finalizing something we've never done it before. I mean, I don't think we're saying that these are bad ideas or that we shouldn't, you know.
I think you're having more problems with the wordage and the explanation. When Dr. Lugo talks, you understand it totally and you agree with it. Their body language. But it's just that that's not written. That's
Right.
your explanation.
Right.
And like I said before, what you explain and the intent of the meeting confer committee is different from what somebody else will look at and infer from. And that's where we could get to trouble. I mean, you know, yes, it makes sense and everything is very easy to understand, but a standard will be developed for when support is given. Yes, when Dr. Lugo mentioned and explained it, it made perfect sense. But if I look at that 10 years from now, what's that going to mean?
Right, to me, I read it as we will determine how special ed is given. Like we have, you know, that's how I interpreted it. So if we're not going to be changing the wording on it, it still could be interpreted that way by somebody else.
So I'd like to call the question unless someone wants to make a last ditch effort to lobby or make a point. Okay, I will move the governing board approve the written agreement as outlined in the 2015-2016 year at a glance, with the exception of the meet and confer team's recommendations pertaining to the length of the school day and the professional agreement.
I second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, on a 2-2, motion fails. Our next agenda item is future agenda items. Would anyone like to add an item?
Yeah. I'd like to add an item for this, for policy, just to clean it up. I don't want to change. There's some minor,
I'd like to entertain revising.
revising it slightly.
Any other agenda items? Okay, seeing none, I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Meeting adjourned at 9:16.
Great.